I think anyone who's been gaming since childhood has at least one white whale game. You know the kind. Something you played once at a friend's or cousin's house and your tiny, underdeveloped child brain doesn't bother remembering the name. Years later, it pops back into your head, and you can't explain it to anyone because it was some weird little title that barely existed in the mainstream. Suddenly, you have to find it. For me, that white whale was Klonoa. I first played it through a PS1 demo disc a school friend owned, replaying the first level over and over until the disc one day vanished from both our lives. Neither of us remembered the name. About a decade later, around 2008 or 2009, I stumbled on a blog post about Klonoa and instantly recognized it. Finally, my white whale had a name, and a triple-digit price tag on the aftermarket. I even saw it in a local retro game shop once, right in front of me, just a simple pane of glass separating us, and yet it remained so agonizingly and tragically out of my reach. Luckily, in 2011, it landed on PlayStation Network for $10. I just bought a PS3, and this was the very first game I downloaded for it. Over the next week, I played through it one level at a time, finally seeing the full game after more than a decade of chasing that demo. And the game, thankfully, turned out to be more than just a nostalgic novelty. It was actually a good game in and of itself. My roommate at the time was the same friend who'd owned that demo disc all those years back. When I beat Klonoa for the first time, I sat for a minute. Then I knocked on his door and simply said, "Dude, you have to finish this game." Not play, finish. At first glance, Klonoa Door to Phantomile doesn't seem like the kind of game you would insist someone finish. It's a 2.5D side-scrolling platformer, so 3D visuals but action locked to 2 dimensions. Klonoa only uses 2 buttons, jump and shoot. His wind ring fires out a short-range gust that inflates enemies like balloons. Once grabbed, you can throw forward as a means of attack, or downward in midair to give yourself a double jump and hit targets below you. When Klonoa isn't holding anything, holding the jump button will make him perform a flutter jump to extend his airtime for a small amount. Because you can potentially chain jumps indefinitely as long as there's an enemy nearby, the game designs its platforming and puzzles around knowing when to grab, when to throw, and when to let go, and Klonoa's almost perfect jump arc makes it all feel smooth and satisfying. The simplicity is deceptive, though, as Klonoa keeps finding clever ways to remix those 3 moves: jump, grab, and throw. It's not about learning new mechanics, it's about squeezing every possible idea from the ones you start with. Its clever twist is how it uses visual depth. Foreground and background aren't just scenery. You can face toward or away from the camera, throwing in those directions to solve puzzles or hit faraway targets. And this is taken to its extreme during boss fights, many of which take place in circular arenas with the boss in the center. Levels, or visions as they're called here, often loop back on themselves. Landmarks you see in the background early on can become playable areas later, such as the windmill seen in the game's very first screen, giving Phantomile a sense of place instead of feeling like a string of disconnected challenges. Door to Phantomile's levels feel satisfyingly varied. While the stage order never changes and most follow a straightforward path from start to finish, a few break from the mold with a more open, non-linear structure. These typically center around a large hub area that branches into several routes the player can tackle in any order. For instance, level 3-2 shows you the way forward right from the start, but blocks progress until you branch off to find keys and flip switches to get a platform moving. Level 5-1 takes this even further, tasking you with collecting 4 colored orbs and returning them to altars in the starting room, letting you choose the order in which you explore each of the 4 paths. The game also resists the urge to recycle its puzzles or set pieces too often. Most appear only once or twice, so even with its relatively simple mechanics, the experience stays fresh and engaging. The back of the box proudly describes Klonoa's 2.5D format as guided 3D, pitching it as a way to explore a fully 3D rendered world without the aimless and empty feel it claims plagued many contemporary 3D games. This is a fascinating little time capsule from the late 90s. Sure, 3D gaming was still the shiny new frontier, but it's not surprising that some players found the extra dimension daunting, maybe even overwhelming, compared to the curated flow of classic 2D design. In that context, Klonoa's middle ground approach to 3D wasn't positioned as a compromise, but as a feature worth bragging about. Phantomile, the dream world where the game takes place, looks at first like a place of pure color and whimsy. Klonoa, voiced by Gumdramon from Digimon, and his best friend Hupo live in the wind village of Breezegale, and one morning they're awoken by a mysterious spacecraft crashing onto nearby Bell Hill. Naturally, they decide to investigate, because when a UFO crashes near your house, you don't call anyone, you just go. They soon discover the villainous Dark King Gadius, voiced by Vamdamon from Digimon, and his right-hand jester henchman Joka, voiced by Tactimon from Digimon. The duo plan to harvest the world's forgotten dreams to unleash Nahatum, a nightmare monster that will devour all of existence. To make matters worse, they've kidnapped the moon spirit Laphise to prevent her Song of Rebirth from restoring Phantomile. After Klonoa learns of the Moon Kingdom from his grandfather, voiced by Dekardramon from Digimon, he sets off with Hupo to rescue Laphise and stop Gadius, meeting and helping the quirky inhabitants of Phantomile along the way, like King Seedoff, voiced by Shellmon from Digimon, and Carol, voiced by Kulumon from Digimon. Unusually for a platformer of the time, Door to Phantomile puts real emphasis on its story. Every level opens and closes with a cutscene, and some even interrupt gameplay mid-level. They're not quick two-line affairs either, they're full-on narrative beats. You can skip them if you want, but the skip button is somewhat elegant here. Press start twice to skip the whole scene, or press once to just jump to the next segment within the same scene. The story itself is straightforward, but the cutscenes always push events forward or flesh out the world, and they're fully voiced. Sort of. All dialogue is delivered in Phantomilian, a fictional in-universe language. As a dumb American kid playing the demo, I thought it was just Japanese or French or something, but no, it's a fully invented language. And this isn't some Banjo-Kazooie or Animal Crossing type deal, where it's just random noises generated by the computer. The devs gave Phantomilian actual vocabulary and recurring phrases. For example, Luparudu means let's go, while Mangya means no or a general negative. This means they hired professional voice actors to stand in a booth and confidently shout what is essentially gibberish into a microphone for hours. The recordings are compressed, probably to save disk space, but it almost sounds too compressed, like it's partly intentional. That hazy, tinny sound gives the voices a dreamlike, otherworldly quality that fits perfectly with the setting. Klonoa's cast is also notable for its abstract designs. No one is really any one specific animal. Klonoa mixes traits of dogs, cats, and rabbits without explicitly being any one of them, and character designer Yoshihiko Arai focused on two things: a distinctive silhouette and big, expressive eyes. That design philosophy carries through to the enemies and NPCs, who all look like they could plausibly appear in someone's dream, whether that dream is sweet or nightmarish. And speaking of nightmares, the tone of Door to Phantomile shifts gradually but inexorably. It begins bright and cheerful, but with each passing stage, the atmosphere darkens and hints at something more sinister. The focus on story means goals and stakes are always clear. Early on, Klonoa and Hupo head to the Forest Kingdom to meet the local shaman, only to find the kingdom's water source blocked. This forces them into a detour through the Water Kingdom to investigate, an early example of how narrative and gameplay are intertwined. Each level introduces a local character, and in a nice payoff, many of them return to help in the final battle. This results in a story that works for kids, but carries enough twists and emotional weight to keep older players invested as well. One memory I have of playing this game goes back to when I bought it on the PSN store. I downloaded it onto my PSP as well, and one day at work I was playing it in the break room before my shift. A close friend and coworker was sitting nearby. He had heard me talk about this game before, and it wasn't really his type of game, but he could tell how much I enjoyed it. After I beat a boss, a cutscene played in which Klonoa lets out this long, heart-wrenching scream. "He sounds upset," my friend said, half joking. "Yeah," I replied. "His grandpa just died." "Oh," he said, caught off guard. "I didn't think people died in that game." And that hadn't really crossed my mind before. Probably because I'd been so fixated on this game for years, I knew it had a more serious, mature tone than it looked on the surface. I didn't know every plot detail, but the idea of a character dying wasn't off the table for me. But for someone going in blind, though, judging by its cutesy mascot platformer appearance, yeah, that could be a shock. Back then, mascot platformers weren't exactly known for fleshed-out stories or tangible stakes. Usually the plot was just an excuse for the game to happen. The day is saved, the world is fine, nobody actually dies. People don't die in Mario, people don't die in Sonic, people don't die in Kirby or Donkey Kong. That's part of what makes Klonoa stand out. Its willingness to have a multifaceted, almost RPG-level plot. And the moment Klonoa's grandpa dies is when the tone takes a sharp turn. His death is not an accident, it's not a noble sacrifice, and there's no last-minute twist where he's revived. He's murdered, his house blown apart because the villain needed the pendant he carried. His life was reduced to collateral damage. So far, you'd been lulled into thinking you're in a harmless fairy tale, and now the mask slips. This is also the point in the game where Joka, the villain's sidekick, stops being comic relief and becomes an actual threat. Up until then, he seemed like just a bumbling henchman, but here he's revealed as an unhinged psychopath, taunting Klonoa about the murder, showing no remorse. The next time we see him is for his boss battle, where he proves himself a ruthless and terrifying opponent. And even in his dying breath, he proudly proclaims his complete devotion to Ghadius. Ghadius himself is an immediately intimidating villain with a tall, imposing design and a booming voice. He is the Lord of Nightmares, making him an outcast in a world of dreams, and so he plans to awaken the Nightmare Crystal Nahatum to consume the world of Phantomile by act of revenge. From here, the bigger twists start coming. Hupo, Klonoa's best friend, is revealed to have been lying the whole time. He's not a wind spirit, but the prince of the Moon Kingdom, disguising himself to enlist Klonoa's help in stopping Ghadius' uprising. And then there's the ending, one I've spent years telling people I refuse to spoil. The twist itself isn't exactly unique, or even that hard to see coming if you're paying attention, but the way it's delivered is so effective that I would never want to rob someone of seeing it firsthand. So if you haven't played this game, don't just look up the Wikipedia synopsis, don't just watch the cutscene on YouTube, play this game. In context, the ending hits harder than you would ever expect from a game like this. Last warning, spoilers ahead, so if you want to skip, jump to the timestamp on screen. Ready? Okay. At the end of the game, we learn Klonoa isn't from Phantomile at all. He was brought here solely to save it, with Hupo altering his memories to make him believe they'd been childhood friends, just to ensure Klonoa would help. Now that Laphise is rescued, she must sing the Song of Rebirth to undo Ghadius' damage, but restoring the world also means Klonoa has to leave, or Phantomile will never truly return to normal. Klonoa refuses to believe it. He's in denial. His memories might be fake, but they still feel real. He begins to lash out, and before he can properly process this betrayal, Laphise begins singing from atop her tower. A portal opens, pulling him away. Hupo grabs Klonoa's wind ring, desperately trying to hold him here, but it's no use. Klonoa vanishes into the void, crying out for the friend he thought he knew. As the song ends, color and life return to Phantomile. Hupo wipes away his tears and smiles. A friend lost, but a world finally at peace. It's not the most original twist, but the execution is near perfect. Klonoa's anguish and Hupo's futile struggle are juxtaposed against one of the most beautiful music tracks in the game, a song meant to represent something unambiguously good, rebirth and healing. It's only once Klonoa is gone that the final bits of life and beauty return to Phantomile, showing that as long as Klonoa stayed, the world could never truly heal. The game subtly prepared us for this, although you likely hadn't noticed. Every time you clear a level, the Phantomilian prisoners you've rescued play a small piece of the Song of Rebirth. The more prisoners you save, the more of the song you hear, and then the ending plays the full version in a completely new, devastating context. The ending even works as meta-commentary. Klonoa is being forced out of this dream world he's grown attached to, just like we are forced to put the controller down when the credits roll. This ending works because it mirrors the experience of dreaming. You wake up, it fades, and no matter how vivid it felt, it's gone. For Klonoa, Phantomile was a dream he couldn't keep. And for you, the player, the credits roll and you're back in your living room. We were sold the same lie that we belonged there, only to be told it's time to leave. The credits show a storybook of our adventures, flipping backwards through our journey. The book closes with the player's chosen name on the cover, suggesting it really was our story all along. For a cute platformer in 1997, this was wholly unexpected, to trust kids with a story that bittersweet and to let it sit with them. Twist endings in video games weren't common back then, since game stories themselves were usually an afterthought in the first place. But Klonoa's ending is up there with Link's Awakening and Snake Eater for me, as one of the most effective twist endings in a video game. It's why I always tell people they need to finish Klonoa, not just play it. I spent years chasing this white whale from my childhood, remembering only that I liked the demo, and the whole time nobody warned me that the weird Animaniacs-looking cat-rabbit game would make me cry. Keep in mind, I didn't shed a single tear at Aerith dying in Final Fantasy VII, but Klonoa's ending had me openly weeping in my early 20s. There's just something about these obnoxiously cute characters screaming into the void as they're literally pulled away from each other that hits like a freight train. Finish this game. Seriously. I haven't really touched on the music much yet, but make no mistake, Door to Phantomile's soundtrack is wonderful. It had 9 composers, but don't let that number fool you into thinking the music lacks cohesion. There's a strong, consistent style throughout, with special focus on woodwinds and smart use of leitmotif. For example, the Song of Rebirth, which I mentioned earlier, is one key motif, and the first level's Windmill song reoccurs several times as well, essentially being the game's main theme. But for me, the boss themes stand out the most. If you listen closely, they're built on the same bass melodies as the level themes, creating a deep sense of unity across the soundtrack. The game also uses dynamic music in impressive ways. It shifts in real time to match your environment, adding echo effects in caves, or muting certain instruments depending on whether you're indoors or outside. In Vision 5-2, when an eclipse periodically darkens the sky and affects nearby enemies, the music intensifies with a heart-pounding arrangement that perfectly fits the mood. During some on-rails sections, the music even syncs up with the rises and falls of the action. All of this combines to give the soundtrack a true theatrical feel. Tonally, the level themes do a fantastic job capturing the mood of each area. The music for Koronia, the Sun Kingdom, uses harsher instruments with fewer woodwinds, evoking the oppressive heat. By contrast, Vision 6-1, the first level in the Moon Kingdom, leans heavily on bells and xylophone to convey a sense of starry wonder. Then, in Vision 6-2, the final level before confronting Ghadius, the soundtrack takes a darker turn. A loud, pounding bass line and synth undercurrent underpin the theme, while the once upbeat Wind Village melody returns, but on bagpipes, giving it an unsettling, almost chaotic feel. Still, the bells and xylophone peek through here and there, symbolizing Klonoa's determination to prevail against overwhelming darkness. These subtle hints of darkness in the music and tone echo the game's original concept, which was much grittier. Early designs had Klonoa as a statue-like robot battling werewolves, and Hupo was conceived as a fire creature that grew stronger by killing and eating other monsters. But Namco eventually shifted course, noticing that the PlayStation market was already fairly saturated with dark titles. They wanted something with broader appeal, and a new mascot character who could stand alongside Mario, Sonic, and Crash. Namco's very own Pac-Man might have faded from the spotlight by then, but Klonoa still pays tribute with a tiny Pac-Man emblem on his hat. The final vision for Klonoa, no pun intended, aimed to appeal both to younger casual players with accessible gameplay, and to older players through emotional storytelling and plot twists. Conceptually, Klonoa's Dreamworld aesthetic drew comparisons to Knights and Kirby, both of which also embrace whimsical dreamlike tones. If Pac-Man was Namco's Mario, then Klonoa was clearly meant to be their Kirby. The gameplay even has a touch of Ristar in its feel. Despite these surface-level similarities, though, Klonoa carves out its own unique identity. It never feels derivative, and while it's relatively short and doesn't exactly break new ground in terms of gameplay, it's also never repetitive or dull, and I'd argue that's what actually matters here. Door to Phantomile was well received by critics, scoring consistently in the high 8s and low 9s, and Klonoa even took home Best Character at that year's Tokyo Game Show. The game was widely seen as Namco's first significant 3D platformer. Reviewers did note that it was relatively short and somewhat easy outside of the boss fights, but they praised its tight platforming and how it wove satisfying puzzles naturally into level design rather than relying solely on jumping challenges. That said, I do want to push back a bit on the lack of difficulty critique, at least when you look beyond just beating the game once. While it's true the story can be finished without much strain, the real challenge lies in going for 100%. Each level hides 6 prisoners to rescue and exactly 150 gems to collect. Each stage contains 1 or 2 mirror spirits that temporarily double the value of every gem you collect. To snag all 150 gems, you have to nail each mirror spirit segment perfectly. Thus, these become mini puzzles themselves, demanding precise timing of hops, double jumps, throws, and flutters before time runs out. Even after countless playthroughs, some of these mirror spirit sections still give me grief. And outside of those, there are still plenty of tricky gems. Some are hidden in eggs that only become visible once you accidentally touch them, with shadows being the only clue they're there. In Vision 3-1, you must knock the armor off of a giant enemy to move him away from a switch, but then hit the switch without accidentally hitting the enemy again, or else you won't have enough time to grab the gems he drops before they vanish. Some enemies come with shields or other defenses that can block Klonoa's wind bullet, forcing you to find alternate strategies to deal with them. Exploding bomb enemies can help solve timed puzzles or clear groups of enemies, but their blasts can also hurt you if you're careless. The periodic eclipse in Vision 5-2 makes enemies invincible while it lasts, adding another layer of complexity to puzzles and platforming. And the final level demands precise jumps across tiny platforms and careful timing of throws to solve intricate puzzles. If you manage to rescue every prisoner, you unlock a bonus level in Baloo's Tower, designed as the ultimate test of your skills. Almost every room sits above bottomless pits or lava, requiring near-perfect chains of enemy grabs to survive. Collecting all the gems here ups the ante even more. And your reward? A funny scene where Baloo gets friend-zoned, plus a jukebox to listen to the game's soundtrack. This bonus level also tracks your best completion time, letting you attempt speedrun challenges if you're so inclined. So while it's true that Door to Phantomile is a short, simple game that's great for newcomers, to say it lacks difficulty isn't quite true. That challenge is there if you seek it, and there's a lot more depth here than many give the game credit for. One design choice I never really understood, though, is how the game handles gem counts on replay. The first time you clear each level, gem collection isn't tracked. After beating the final boss, you unlock Level Select, allowing you to replay stages, but all gem counts reset to 0. That means that if you collected all 150 gems on your first playthrough of a level, you still have to do it again in order to actually get credit. Now, the game does keep track of your prisoner counts, and the reward for finding all gems isn't particularly impressive, so I'm left wondering what the reasoning behind this was. Klonoa Door to Phantomile sold modestly well in Japan, but didn't quite catch on overseas. One of the most consistent things critics mentioned at the time was how cute the game was. Maybe a little too cute. So much so that it was bound to turn some people away. This made the game really tough to market in the West. By the late 90s, gaming audiences were increasingly craving more mature, serious, or edgy experiences, and Klonoa felt like the exact opposite of that. Klonoa's cuteness was immediate and relentless, right from the game's title screen. It was a bright, colorful mascot platformer launching at a time when even other pre-existing mascots were already leaning into darker, cheekier, sometimes risque aesthetics and humor just to keep up with trends. Gaming ads in the 90s had long been pandering to teenage boys, and Klonoa's gentle, whimsical vibe just wasn't in sync with that. American advertisers were evidently so stumped about how to sell the game that their best pitch was, I swear I'm not making this up, to compare Klonoa to an STD. The joke being that Klonoa kind of sounds like chlamydia, I guess. Yeah, somehow that made it through several layers of corporate approval. Multiple marketing executives and presumably Namco higher-ups saw this and said, yeah, that's fine. So, unsurprisingly, Door to Phantomile bombed in the US. But over the years, word of mouth grew, and Klonoa became a highly sought-after gem for PS1 and platforming collectors, even if it remained pretty obscure to casual gamers. Back in 2015, I even finally snagged a genuine physical copy for my own collection, and I'm pretty sure it's the priciest game I own now. How much is it going for on eBay these days? Complete in-box copies run around $400? Not bad. Holy crap, PSA graded copies are hitting $17K? Jeez. Finance bros really have ruined casual hobbies, huh? But beyond its scarcity or collector's value, Klonoa Door to Phantomile remains a game I tell people they need to finish. Not just play, finish. It's one of those games that's simple to play, beautiful to look at, and quietly profound in ways you don't expect. It's a shame Klonoa didn't become the next Sonic or Crash, but maybe its obscurity is part of what makes it special. Like a dream you can't quite put into words. Anyway, Klonoa for Smash Bros, please. Thank you!
Here we go!